Number 11, the language of cinema. Now, if you'll permit me, I'd like to compare Revenge of the Sith with what is widely considered to be one of the greatest motion pictures ever made, Citizen Kane. Is that fair? Nope. You see, there are many levels of irony here, too many to think about, but in short, you got two directors that both have total control over their film. Wells used special effects to extensively tell a story, and Lucas used a story to extensively tell special effects. Now, I know that Citizen Kane is really about William Randolph Hearst, but in his own way, Lucas kind of became his own Charles Foster Kane. Going from an idealistic young filmmaker wanting to rebel against the system to becoming the system, and a bit of a weird recluse himself. Now, whether Lucas realized the personal irony or not, I think he tried to make Anakin Skywalker into his own Charles Foster Kane, and maybe what he thought would be his own film masterpiece. Everyone just always says Lucas is just a horrible commercial sellout that just made these movies to sell toys and make shitloads of money. But I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt and explore this. So let's call this Citizen Vader, shall we? So you got a boy who was taken from his home and his mother at a young age.
You going, Mom? What about Mom?
And away from a bad environment, slavery, or an abusive father. Eventually, he becomes an idealistic young man with a set of principles. You got the Jedi Code and Kane's own Declaration of Principles. Then slowly each character is consumed and ultimately destroyed by their own arrogance and lust for power and control, and a fear of losing the ones that they love. A fall from grace, if you will. We even have a necklace sled theme going on at the end here. It's a classic tale, really, but it just doesn't work with Anakin because the character doesn't feel like a real person because it's written so horribly. The fact is that this script feels rushed and not thought out, probably because it was rushed and not thought out.
Yeah, they're already building sets. God help me. I'm gonna have to start this script pretty soon.
Also, Lucas is notorious for not being an actor's director.
I will not betray the Republic. You know, my loyalties, so that you're turning on, but I have rewritten, I spent the whole weekend rewriting the scene between you and Palpatine, where you turn.
Yeah?
And I've added some more to that. They give you a performance, you talk about what you want to have happen, and then you do another take, and then you talk again, and you just keep going through it until you get it the way you want it.
He seems to just view actors as a tool, like a computer or a prop. You know, sometimes an actor can bring a whole new level to a scene that you didn't imagine in the first place. But in the prequels, there's a very clear line of distinction between the actor scenes and the special effects scenes. The action scenes can be animated in any way possible. There's a lot of good action in this movie, I guess. When you animate all sorts of shit, the camera can move around unrestricted and things generally move faster in a more visual way. These action scenes would be really neat if we knew or cared about what was happening. I mean, Obi-Wan's riding around on a dinosaur trying to hit a lizard who's inside a robot suit with the stick with electricity on the end, while the lizard in the robot suit is riding around on a giant robotic hamster wheel. But when it comes to the dialogue scenes between characters, it's a whole other story. The scenes typically have the blocking of a soap opera, something that's shot for efficiency reasons rather than artistic. They are so dull and unimaginative, it's almost a contradiction given the amazing environments they're set in. Film is a visual medium, and Lucas is praised for being a pioneer of film visuals because he revolutionized special effects. The irony is now when he's given two humans and some dialogue, it's a boring disaster on film. It's fairly apparent he just wants to get these scenes out of the way to get us back to the action. But in a film that's primarily a character study, apparently, is that really the way to go? Most of the dialogue scenes are done one of two ways. Either characters walking somewhere, or people sitting down, usually on a couch. The story is so bland and uninteresting, what people are saying usually doesn't connect to the environment they're in anyways. They could be anywhere, really.
I was so worried about you.
When we have a scene that starts with characters walking, they'll usually slow down and then stop. Then we'll go to what's called shot, reverse shot. Basic over-the-shoulder camera angles of two people talking to each other. This is the most basic and simplistic way to shoot dialogue scenes. Now to spice it up, at almost the exact same moment in a scene when the shot reverse shot starts to get boring, a character will walk away and go over to a window and then look out the window.
When you say, I want more, but I know I shouldn't, you can turn away.
Lucas broke new ground by giving Natalie Portman some business during a scene and having her packing a suitcase. Typically Padme scenes, though, are usually them sitting down somewhere and talking. The location will vary, the positions vary, but usually it's just them sitting there talking. In fact, one scene even begins with them already sitting down on the couch. They didn't even need to walk over to it. Hey, doesn't this lady have a job? Is her job to sit on couches all day and talk? Oftentimes during a couch scene, one person will stand up, walk a few paces away, and then turn around. In Citizen Kane, the visuals and blocking were so much more important than just telling the story about how a guy becomes a selfish a-hole. It's such a rich film in its detail and execution, and it has almost no action scenes. Well, except for the greatest room trashing scene in cinematic history, which even Tommy Wiseau couldn't top. You fucked that room up, Charlie. But Kane is primarily about the characters, and it's way more interesting to watch just because of the attention to detail, the direction, and the framing. Now, comparing Episode 3 to Citizen Kane is not fair, I'll agree. Episode 3 is an art, it's commercial diarrhea. But what irks me is just how basic and static things were filmed. They just put people in front of a green screen and said they were going to make the background interesting later. Even when they're not on the green screen, the scene construction is pretty awful and boring. Like the scene in Episode 2 when Anakin is told about what happened to his mother. Instead of coming up with a creative visual way to get this information to us, they're all just sitting at a table. This is why people are bored during these movies. It's like it's a fucking play or something. Aunt Beru even brings out beverages. Here, would you like a refreshment? While this guy tells you about how your mother was kidnapped and raped. Wow. And then check out this exciting shot. The point I'm trying to make is that there is a very basic language to cinema that seems to have been totally ignored. You can create an emotional connection, and people will remember the movie and it'll stick with them. Then you got some movies you see and you don't even remember seeing it. Some very basic images can haunt you, they can make you laugh. Most of the time it's a simple cinematic trick to do this. Placement of characters in the frame, the setting, the length of shot, etc. I don't need to reference Citizen Kane to make this point. Let's quickly look at a basic example from the original Star Wars trilogy.
Yes, but now we must eat.
They take this simple scene of expository dialogue where an admiral basically just tells Vader that the Falcon is in an asteroid belt.
Our ships have sighted the Millennium Falcon, Lord, but it has entered an asteroid field.
But they use this opportunity to do something creative with the characters and the location. We are reminded that Vader is both human and machine by showing him inside his little breathing pod. And this is also the very first time that we ever see Vader in a position of vulnerability. This adds a lot of depth to his character that we haven't seen before. The framing suggests that there's a clear separation between a normal man and what Vader has become. So whether or not you know it, your brain is being fed information about Darth Vader's character, and you're made to feel a certain way, all while we're doing the business of the plot. If this were in a prequel, it would have been done using two characters standing in a room against a green screen done in shot reverse shot. I guess they could have put millions of asteroids flying around the window behind them later to make the frame interesting. And when you got a set and actors and things to work with, you can make an interesting scene at the same time that your characters talk. Framing, blocking, character placement, lighting on the set, camera movement, it's all part of making a movie and making your audience feel a certain way about a scene. When Anakin pours his heart out to Padme, they're sitting on a couch. When Obi-Wan tells Padme he's gotta go kill Anakin, they're sitting on a couch. When they talk about the assassination plot, they're sitting on a couch. Sitting on a couch, sitting on a couch, talking in a room, sitting at a booth in a diner, talking in shot, reverse shot, sitting at a table, walking somewhere, walking in a room, walking and talking, standing and talking in a room, talking in an elevator. It's usually just 2 characters or sometimes 3 characters. And they're always talking and sitting. But it's really hard to film a complicated scene with lots of different creative camera angles when you're just sitting in a chair with your coffee.
When I shoot, I have 2 cameras, A camera and B camera.
A camera, B camera. 2 people talking to each other in front of a green screen. And it's not just the fact that every dialogue scene is dull. It's that these films have predictable and uninteresting editing, too.
The first cut of Star Wars was an unmitigated disaster.
I come in on weekends and I recut the film on my own. And I tried to get the editor cut it my way, and he didn't really want to, and so I had to let the editor go.
It was cut in a very traditional manner of just playing things out in masters and then going into the coverage, and let the actors' rhythms dictate the cuts rather than having the cuts kind of drive the rhythm of the scenes.
Well, we'll leave this for the time being, and we'll create this other shot, and then if this other shot works, we'll come back to this shot. So
consequently, there wasn't any excitement in the footage the way that it had been put together.
It's so boring. Psychological computer program edited the movie. The pacing sucks, there's no style to anything. I could talk for 2 hours about the editing in these movies, but one little thing has always stuck out to me, is that there is almost always a dropped my lightsaber reaction shot. Sometimes it's necessary, but most times not really. I mean, when someone stops using their lightsaber, we understand they dropped it. But almost every time someone loses a lightsaber, we need to cut to a reaction shot of it falling. Like we didn't see that it happened? Or like we need to be told that this is important for some reason? It only happens one time where we don't cut to a separate shot of it falling, and it works just fine. But I think it was because the action was so fast that they couldn't cut to it, or they would have.